Yeah,
for
he's
awesome.
testing it out. Here we go. See, good to seeing y'all.
Good
Absolutely.
afternoon, Kiwanians. Places, everyone. How's everyone doing today? It's a gorgeous day out there. Little chilly. Are you fighting to turn on the heat in your household? Mine's a perpetual fight. My husband wants it on, I want it off. So we're never going to come to an agreement. Thank you all for being here today. I'm Jean Bollendorf, president of the Kiwanis Club of Roanoke, one of the best Kiwanis clubs in the world, and certainly a premier club in the Valley. First off, I want to thank everyone for all of your very generous contributions so far to hurricane relief. We put out the call and you all answered very generously. We are now over $1,800. I think the Chester Club outside of Richmond has us beat, though. They are putting in $10,000, which is amazing. And we're very, very proud of them for that effort. We are going to put a deadline on hours of this Friday because we want you to save some of your money for the rest of the year for Kiwanis. Thank you. We enjoyed a very great fish fry on Monday with our Phoenix Star Action Club. Big thanks to Ken Briggs and Mike Loveman for being the organizers of that. Our board had a board meeting and a board retreat at Hope Tree Academy, which was very nice, a nice event for us. And it was in Salem. We had fish fry at the pavilion after our planning retreat. It was a gorgeous fall day out there, and we appreciate being able to connect with one of our service clubs. Today, we're going to start with our call for introspection with John Montgomery. That will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance with Harry Zuloff, and then Kevin Holt will come up and do the introduction of guests.
Thank you, President Jean. Good afternoon, everyone. Thomas Merton once wrote, "Our job is to love others without stopping to inquire whether or not they are worthy." Some of you know this story. This mantra, loving others, really hit home to me because several years as club secretary, I've worked with some wonderful people, present company included. And when I was seated at my perch up here a few years back, I was asked to do something I considered especially difficult and challenging. I half turned to the club president, who was Don Witt at the time, and said, I was talking mostly myself, but Don's hearing is better than you think. He quickly responded, "Our job is to love them all." As I've told many of you, I was a pool of mess for the remainder of the meeting, lost in thought, really. Maybe that is our job. The next year, President Jenny Lee's theme happened to be Love Thy Neighbor, and she rewarded exceptional club service with a Kiwanis pin with the logo emblazoned on a heart. Some of you still wear those often, and I have mine on today. An inspiring thought, I think, and when you're wearing that pin, it's never very far from your heart. Love thy neighbor. Think of some of our recent Kiwanis Club of Roanoke themes and our missions. Making a difference was Sherry Dillon. Defying gravity, Ben Spiker. Be the light, Sherry Hartman. And of course, we were building playgrounds and nature parks along the way, practicing outreach. Did you all know our theme was outreach last year? I think you did. And now answering the question, what is your superpower? As Kiwanians, we show our colors routinely. But let's face it, loving others can be hard work. Love is not always romantic as I catch my bride's eye over there. Not always, most of the time. Perhaps we've learned this from raising a child. Perhaps we've learned it from a long friendship. Perhaps from caring for someone who is ill or being cared for ourselves. Love takes time, commitment, and genuine desire to say to other people in all circumstances, I'm glad that you're here. It's good that you exist. People often say to me, I suppose, thinking of my Kiwanis gear and clothes and the license plate that I had on my car for a long time until I recently no longer have that license plate. People would say to me, you must really like Kiwanis. And I often respond, actually, instinctively, oh, I love it. But do I love it? Well, today, at least, I'm going to put that idea into practice, or at least strive to do so.
Is Harry with us today? All right, Tom, you want to step up and lead us in the pledge? Thank you, sir.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Tom. And Kevin's coming up to do our introduction of guests.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Holt. I'm a partner at Gentry Lock here in town, a relatively new member. I think I rejoined rather in August. I'd belonged to the club, 20 years ago, and then kids came along and other commitments came about, but happy to be back with a Gentry Lock corporate membership. So I've been asked to introduce our guests. If the guests and the host could each stand in turn. We'll start with Melissa Woodson with Ram House, whose host is Greg Lineberger. Next guest, David Tate with Habitat Roanoke, hosted by Jeff Vick. Next is Joe Crandall of Valley Wealth Group, hosted by Alex Barge. Next is Sam Oakey with Oakeys, whose host is Chris Roush. Next is Kim Skellington, and Kim is hosted by Spencer Marsh. And last but certainly not least, our guest from the farthest distance, I believe, Louisiana, soon to be Washington State, Cole Held with Leadham Inc., and his host is former President Don Wilson. Welcome to all.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kevin. It's great to have all these guests with us today. And next up on your agenda, I just wanted to point out the 6 objects of Kiwanis. So in 1924, so that was 100 years ago this year, the Kiwanis objects were declared by Kiwanis International. And I wanted to take some time this year for us to focus on these objects. We had a very robust discussion of them at our board retreat on Monday. And what we realized is that even though the language is a bit antiquated on some of them, they still have the same spirit and intention today as they did in 1924. And they offer wonderful guidance for our mission of our club and also for our introspections, such as John's today. The first of the 6 objects is to give primacy to the human and spiritual rather than to the material values of life. So this is something for us all to just think about as we move forward for our year. And I think those of us who are in Kiwanis understand the value of the human and the spiritual and giving of ourselves. And that's one of the reasons we're drawn to service in our club. Superpower recognitions. Well, today I want to recognize 3 different people. First, I just want to clarify, you can have more than one superpower, so we might be hearing about more than one for the same person in any given week. And I would like to recognize Ken Briggs and Mike Loveman for their superpower of always including our Action Club members and making them feel welcome as part of our larger club. And I also want to recognize our tech guru, Mike McAvoy, who's sitting over here to my left. He's premiering some brand new equipment today, which seems to be working very well. And, Mike is actually a pretty important person. As the CEO of the Water Authority, he's got a pretty big job and he's got people to do things. But in our club, he's a helper and he's our tech guy. So how is that for somebody putting aside their ego and helping out a great Kiwanis club? Thank you for that, Mike. Next up, John Montgomery is going to be talking about our youth protection guidelines. This is something we need to review annually as part of our membership in Kiwanis International.
Thank you, President Jean. Many of you have been in the club for several years, are familiar with Reef Kessler, who's been our SLP leader, making this appeal to you to listen to what Kiwanis International has to say about working with young people. Obviously, developing tomorrow's leaders is a big function of Kiwanis, and Kiwanis asks that all adults working with youth under the age of 18 at any Kiwanis event are required to abide by the policies that I'm going to highlight. Obviously, in the amount of time we have for discussion, there won't be much detail now. You will get an email with a summary of what I've said and then some. And those of you who have been in Kiwanis for as long as I have or longer, and many of you predate me, but if you've even been here 5 or 10 years, you might say, oh, I think I've heard all this before. Do I really need to pay attention? I ask if you would make an effort to hear the highlights at least, because we all encounter youth in our Kiwanis work, whether we are attending a key club or a builders club, or in some cases a college group, CKI. We've had some people in our club who have qualified for a discounted membership because they were in key clubs or CKI. So some of you may know from personal experience. And then there's those of you that serve as advisors to our youth program. We've been blessed that Reef, and before Reef, Ken Briggs, Ken is here today. Where are you, Ken? Where are you sitting? Ken's been an excellent leader of advocating youth. And we make a policy of inviting the key clubs to come to this very meeting place. So perhaps you'll be sitting next to a key clubber or at an adjoining table, or you might be going through line with them. Most of it is common sense when you interact with young people today, but we want to make sure that you're conscious of not saying or doing something that would not be becoming to you or the club, frankly. Part of it is for legal concerns, and we have a number of attorneys in the room that probably know firsthand where someone has made a slip, made a mistake, and ended up in some sort of suit. But on top of that, just human decency calls for us to be considerate. Kiwanis asks that this education occur annually, including providing a copy of these policies to each club member. And what we do is do that through the email system. I have all your email addresses, and you will receive it before the end of the week. This is Youth Week in Kiwanis, so and Youth Month in Kiwanis. So you'll be seeing other information for those of you that receive correspondence from the Capital District. We require that clubs have a clear criminal history background check for any member who's serving as an advisor. Many of you have filled that role in the past and have been through that process. The club pays for that. And if you encounter the costs on your own, you're reimbursed for it. But it needs to be done every 2 years. So some of you have been advisors for more than 2 years. It might be time to renew, and I'll be in touch with you about those details. Some of you may be asked to be a chaperone. A chaperone is defined as a Kiwanis member, 21 years of age or older, who has been approved to spend time with young people. The background check helps ensure that. Those of you who are SLP advisors may be attending their meetings. You need to know that if there's overnight stay involved, that 1 adult per 10 children must be serving during an overnight event. If it's on-site event, a single day, it's 1 adult per 50 students. The district administrators for SLP have other requirements. I don't think we currently have anyone who's in a district role, but that would be something that we would address when you are. Transportation is something to think about. I know Ken in his role, others of you have traveled with high school or junior high, middle school students. If you're having transportation, think in the rule of threes, with at least 3 people in the vehicle at all times, with approval from a parent or guardian for the transportation arrangements. You can check with the SLP advisor at the school to make sure that that's set. Again, we don't want to take chances. Obviously, some of these things are no-brainers, but again, it doesn't hurt to be reminded that the use of alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, and other substances, if you're attending any Kiwanis event that is produced primarily by or for the benefit of youth, adults are expected to refrain from using or being under the influence of those. Let's say you go to a convention. Ken's been to conventions before. Others of you may have too. You're staying in a hotel. There's other adults. You go down to the lounge at 11 o'clock. You don't want to slip up and say, oh, what would it hurt if I just have a beer or two? You don't want to do that. The possession of prescriptions and non-prescription medications by youth at a Kiwanis event should be permitted only by the written permission of the parent or guardian. I think you need to be conscious of that. If someone's popping some pills, you want to make sure that they are under a proper prescription. If a Kiwanian observes troubling behavior, you must immediately contact the appropriate personnel at the event. If the Kiwanian becomes aware of troubling behavior after the event, they must contact leaders of the event and provide notification to law enforcement personnel as appropriate. That may seem remote, but it's funny how some things happen. All documents bearing personal identity you want to talk about publicly, I would suggest you talk to the advisor from the school. And lastly, what I want to emphasize in this day and age, youth and social media. For any social networking site that involves requesting a connection, such as inviting someone to be a friend on Facebook, adults should never initiate such connections with youth. Again, it seems obvious, but it's amazing how you get to know some of these young people and you're friends with them, so to speak, and they want to be friends on Facebook. You don't want to respond to that. Adults should treat their interaction with youth on social networking as though the interaction were occurring in public. If it would not be appropriate to say something to a young person in public, it should be not said as a comment on a social networking site either. If you have other questions, I'll be here after the meeting or can email me, and when you get the email and read through the detail, if you see something, don't hesitate to ask. Again, I'm sorry it's not Reef Kessler. I'm not really filling his shoes because no one can replace Reef Kessler, but I hope you appreciate our club's commitment to this program. It's part of being a distinguished club, and we want to support President Gene in doing what we need to do to be a distinguished club. Thank you.
Thank you, John, and thank you, guests, for bearing with us as we cover that piece of business. That is a great segue into something that I wanted to bring to the group's attention. You know, I had asked for folks to sign up for committees a number of weeks ago, and we have been finalizing those. I am still very much in need for a chair or co-chairs of our service leadership program. So this is the committee that supervises our Key Club advisors as well as our Action Club and any other youth programming that we do. I'm asking all of you to think deeply about your ability to take a project like this on with the help of somebody else or with my help, and to let me know if you're available to do that. I am particularly in need of a Kiwanis advisor for our William Fleming Key Club. We need to really do some hard work in building our key clubs back up. We have not quite recovered from the pandemic with regard to our relationships with our key clubs, and that's a very strong part of what we do as a Kiwanis club, and it's important for our community that we support our youth in that way. So if you are able to step into that role or have an idea for somebody who could, please let me know. A little bit of other business. We do have an environment committee Zoom on Monday. That's the 21st at 12:30. Courtney Plaster, our new member, is the chair of that committee. If you are on that committee or want to be on that committee and didn't receive something, please let her know or let me or John know, and we can get you her contact information. And then we also have the Nature Park Fall Planting coming up next weekend, not this one, but the following, October 26th. There may still be sign-up sheets on the table. I think Sherry Hartman had those. Cynthia Gray is leading that effort for us, and that is a natives in, invasives out, where we will be planting some more native plants in our nature park. All right, so that's our announcements, and we're going to move into our brag bucks. For the benefit of our guests, brag bucks are an opportunity to pay $2 or more for a 30-second brag. And these are often personal items or promotions of community events. So I've got Chris Rouse. I know my good friend Melissa is going to come up and do one. So come on up and stand in line, Melissa. And are you the first? Okay.
First, for those of you who are at the Williamson Road Business Association yesterday, I apologize for repeating what you've already heard, but I'm rather on a world tour right now. Within the last 24 hours, Ram House has unexpectedly raised $50,000 towards our capital campaign, and that was unexpected, and I'm really pleased with that. We are well over the $2 million mark, headed to a $4 million campaign. Because we know that there's problems in the city, thankfully, we've been working for 4.5 years to work on trying to improve what's going on with the homeless. So on November the 13th, and I do have flyers for anyone who didn't get one, we are sponsoring an awareness event. It will be the history of Ram House, where we have been and where we are going, because we are going in a place that is going to help this city recover and get better. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Melissa. Come on up.
Thank you, President Jean. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. All right, I have a very important brag, and I'm going to share this as quickly as possible. This past Saturday, United Way had our Centennial Gala, and as part of that, we were honored to recognize individuals and organizations whose exceptional contributions have shaped the future of our community. These one-time Centennial Legacy Awards celebrate trailblazing efforts, visionary leadership, and enduring generosity, leaving a lasting impact on United Way and the Roanoke Valley. This particular award is a Centennial Legacy of Impact Award, honoring innovation and transformative initiatives. The Centennial Legacy of Impact Award recognizes individuals whose pioneering spirit and transformative initiatives have redefined community impact. The award honors bold, innovative efforts that have left an enduring legacy of change. Now, here's the most important part. Our honoree, Sherry Hartman. Wow. And I'm not done, so thank you so much. Sherry has profoundly influenced youth programming and community health in the Roanoke Valley. As the founder of the community youth program at St. John's and a pioneer with Family Services Teen Outreach Program, Sherry created a nurturing environment that has empowered countless children, providing a safe space for growth and development. Sherry's visionary leadership also played a key role in the creation of the Kiwanis Centennial Playground, an inclusive space that will benefit children and families for generations. Sherry's influence extends beyond youth services. Her groundbreaking work in establishing Carillion's office-based opioid treatment program has been pivotal in combating the opioid crisis, providing critical care and support to those in need. Moreover, Sherry's commitment to data-driven solutions, exemplified by her leadership in the 2024 Virginia Alice Report, underscores her dedication to addressing the needs of vulnerable populations through informed, impactful strategies. Sherry's innovative approach, tireless advocacy, and passion is truly deserving of a recipient of this award. Once again, please join me in congratulating Sherry Hartman, the recipient of the Centennial Legacy of Impact Award.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Bruce Swanson. A brag for my grandson Isaiah, who's a graduate of Cape Spring High School, and we delivered him to the University of Chicago 2 weeks ago, where he's an incoming freshman, so we're very proud of Isaiah. On the way back, we stopped at the Flight 93 Memorial in Somerset County in Pennsylvania. And if any of you have not gone there, it is a wonderful compliment, and I use the word wonderful. It's a very sombering place, very thoughtful place. But many of us have been to New York City to the towers, for that location. But this is, 200 miles away. It is meaningful, it's impactful, it's heartbreaking, but it's one of the most wonderful places I've ever been to. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Melissa, Chris, and Bruce. Do we have any other braggers? Okay. So next up, we have our speakers. And these are two ramp graduates, Spencer Marsh with Tiny Cargo and Jess Gilberti with Quintoros. And it's my pleasure to introduce Bart Wilner, who will introduce them.
Thank you, President Jean. I didn't quite get the applause that Sherry got, but that's okay. She deserves it. There's still time. So good afternoon. Our speakers for the month of October, as you all know, have been centered around innovation, technology, entrepreneurship, and business startups. We have heard so far from Aaron Burcham and John Hagee, who both play leadership roles with RAMP, the Regional Accelerator and Mentoring Program right here in Roanoke, Virginia. Our speakers today, to my left here, are both RAMP graduates. So now we actually get to hear from someone who graduated from the RAMP program. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Spencer Marsh and Dr. Jessica Gilberti. Dr. Marsh is the Chief Scientific Officer of the Tiny Cargo Company. He has a PhD in biomedical engineering and is one of the world's leading experts in extracellular vesicles and their use in drug delivery. Dr. Gilberti, the president, the founder, and the chief scientific officer of Quintoros. She has a PhD in infectious disease, a doctor of veterinary medicine, DVM, and a master's of science in immunology. It's clear both Jess and Spencer are lacking in education, but we're going to let them speak anyway. You will be amazed at what you learn about the Tiny Cargo Company and Kentourus, what they actually do, and how participating in RAMP help their companies. So please join me in giving Dr. Marsh and Dr. Gilberte a warm Kiwanian welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for letting us have the platform to speak with you all today. These slides that we're going to be talking off of will be right up there, and there will probably be some explanation on those that will help to give a little bit more information to what we're going to speak about. As mentioned, we are scientists by training. We are not business people, but what RAMP allowed us to do was take innovations out of the Fralin Biomedical Research Institute, in my case, or Virginia Tech, in Jess's case, and create companies and learn how business works. A PhD can teach you a lot of things, but it does not teach you how to start a business. And what RAMP really provided me, I won't speak for Jess, but it taught us how to create a business model, a financial model, how to perform market research, how to do customer discovery. And none of these things are evident along the way of becoming a scientist by training. So with that being said, we'll start with a bit of a background on what it is we do. And then we'll get into what the region, where the region currently is, where it's going, and how we believe we'll get there. So as a background, Tiny Cargo is the company that was founded by Dr. Robert Gordy. He's a professor and center director at the Fralin Biomedical Research Institute, where I serve as chief scientific officer. We work with Homestead Creamery. We take milk from Homestead, and we purify what are known as extracellular vesicles from that solution, and utilize that as a drug delivery platform for a wide range of therapeutics, ranging from gene editing molecules to monoclonal antibodies to peptides and small molecules. And what this allows for is the development of the first ever drug delivery platform that is completely natural, non-immunogenic, and can be orally administered. So as of current, these drugs are delivered by nanoparticles or other formulations that are entirely foreign, and your body treats it as such. But what we've done is we've taken just completely natural. If you had any milk today in your coffee, you ingested about 10 trillion of these, as they're present in milk at about 1 trillion exosomes per milliliter. And we can now take, well, starting in March of next year, we'll have our plant constructed right off Fugate Road here in Roanoke, and we'll be able to take 1,000 liters of milk, generate over 100 liters of concentrated milk exosomes, which represents over 50 kilograms. As of current, the only production method, or the only amount of exosomes you can buy, are in microgram quantities, which, for those of you not familiar with metric, you're talking about over millions of times more will be available to be manufactured right here in Roanoke than any other production facility in the world. That was innovated and invented by Dr. Robert Gordy. But beyond that, we're looking to replace nanoparticles in their use in pharmaceutical, in agricultural, in cosmeceutical, and in nutraceutical industries. And we're going to go through and load various compounds, such as those that I mentioned before, in order to enhance the overall delivery of these compounds, as well as remove plastics from use in agricultural products and beyond. And just one little note, I feel like this, I didn't know this until I met with Bayer about 6 months ago. They currently deliver plasmids to plants by using nanoparticles, and the kind of layman way of saying that is they spray plastic on plants to deliver drugs to them. And then those plants are put into the product stream and then eaten by all of us. And one of the most immediate goals of Tiny Cargo is to eliminate this and replace this with milk-derived exosomes. So I'll hand this off to Jess in a moment, and then we'll talk about, after she explains what Kentourus is all about, we'll get into what we currently, or where we currently are, where the region needs to go in order to retain companies such as the two here, as well as a few dozen that are right on our heels, and what the region can do in order to really make this a biotechnology hub. Thank you.
Hey everybody. So I think you can tell that my company is centered around horses. So I'm a veterinarian. by training. And when I was out in practice, I noticed that a lot of horses broke bones, torn ligaments, bowed tendons, and they also develop arthritis, just like we do. But despite all of these injuries I was seeing, we didn't really have anything to treat these injuries in horses. And that's what leads to the catastrophic injuries you hear about centered around the Kentucky Derby, where these horses get an injury and they really have no option other than lose their life to that injury. So I was really interested in looking at the regenerative properties of platelets. So has anybody ever heard of platelet-rich plasma? Yeah, so some of you might have actually gotten it in your knee before, your hip, your elbow. Really common therapeutic you can get from your orthopedic doctor or your sports medicine doctor. What we did was we actually went into equine platelets, which we also have a platelet-rich plasma for horses, and we figured out how they work. And we figured out what molecules restore tendon healing or reverse arthritis. And we basically manufacture that and put it in a vial. So what's the benefit of that? So you might make really good PRP, but you might not make really good PRP. So how can I put your PRP in you? And by isolating just these really small molecules that these platelets make, I am allowing that ability without any bad responses. So when you think about host graft rejection, when you're getting a kidney, none of that, or if you take something and you have an allergic reaction, we don't see any of those adverse effects when we use these molecules from one horse to another. So much so that in our clinical trials, we've seen pretty amazing data come back. So this technology is a platform technology. It can do a lot of things, right? Bones, tendons, ligaments, arthritis. I haven't even talked about how it can also combat some infectious diseases. So what RAMP allowed me to do is really hone in on what's my target market. As a scientist, I kind of want to chase what I find interesting, but that's not necessarily what somebody's going to pay for or pay a lot for, right? So what is going to allow us to get onto market, grab that target market quickly so we can start making money and generating profit, and then I can chase some of those more scientific interests. So what's really interesting about this technology is we've seen some pretty amazing turnarounds in horses. So to date in our pilot clinical trial, we've treated about 50 horses for musculoskeletal injuries. Those injuries come with about a 20% mortality rate. And then about the ones that do survive, only 50% of them go back to, taking your kid around the riding arena all the way to going to the Olympics. So we only have 50% what we call return to athletic function. Those that got bioply had 0% mortality rates and 80% return to function. So we've had massive success stories, and that's just within the 50 horses that we've started with our pilot study. So one of the success stories I have up on this slide, and you can see it says Paris 2024. We actually treated a horse that went to the Olympics. So the horse presented in May with a really bad injury, and that injury meant that his Olympic dreams were gone. We treated that horse in the joint because it was an arthritis for 7 days. He was on a plane going to France in June, competed in July, and actually came in top 30. So not only did he make it to the Olympics, he was able to also be competitive in his field of show jumping. So all this to say, this is really exciting, but we can't get to the next step until we have a good manufacturing practice clean room. So right now I'm making this out of my academic lab. It's still very scientific, but to bring it from bench to stall side, for lack of a better word, we need a clean room. And I've been on the phone with the FDA and there's no workaround for that. Unfortunately, clean rooms are expensive, and let Spencer go into more detail. But once we get that clean room in place, we can then start our pivotal clinical trial. And based on where we are and how safe this drug is, we can also get low risk status from the FDA, which means that we can sell and not market. Once we get full approval, then we can market. So once this clean room is in place, within 3 quarters, I will be profitable because of the amount of products we make and the need in the industry for a product like this.
So with that being said, there's kind of some good news and some bad news. The good news is that the current ecosystem has a fantastic base with Virginia Tech and the Fralin Biomedical Research Institute. There are world-class scientists that are producing amazing projects such as that Jess just spoke about, as well as Tiny Cargo's founder, Dr. Gordy, and countless others who put in invention disclosures, who file patents, who create companies, who can then spin out and go through ramp, and who are supported by the business infrastructure that Ramp, RBTC, and Verge have installed. We're even building the next layer of infrastructure here with in Blacksburg, there's the Corporate Research Center. In Roanoke, there's the old IBM building, which is, I'd call the black box building, where they're putting in analytical space. The problem arises at the next step. And Jess alluded to this, but in order for companies who are at our stage to enter into clinical trials, you have to bypass what the FDA calls their CMCs, or their chemical and manufacturing control step. This means that a facility has to be FDA audited and approved in order to generate products that are then used in clinical trials. Now, that's really good news for consumers, because that means that all of the facilities that generate drugs, that generate foods, that generate anything that goes into your body has to pass this test. But Roanoke, as of current, does not have any of this infrastructure present. And as of right now, the money to build these sites is difficult to come by. Tiny Cargo is building a facility here. Kentoros, as Jess will speak to in just a moment, is building a facility in Roanoke. These are incredibly expensive, and the cost is about $1,000 per square foot. So with a facility like the one that we're talking about, we have a 1,600 square foot facility. You're looking at an approximate cost of $1.6 million. And this hurdle requires companies to raise this money to build these facilities, and it delays the process by 2 to 3 years. Fortunately, what we've done is Jessica Kentoros, as well as Tiny Cargo, have enabled this within our companies. And these are facilities that we're going to put up and get running. However, right down the road from Roanoke, I'm sure you all are familiar with Research Triangle Park, has hundreds of thousands of square foot of clean rooms that are readily available. And not only do you not have to pay to build them, they will pay you to move there. So from a financial standpoint, it was pretty it wasn't the wisest decision of ours to stay here and build a facility, but Rob and I both have roots here, and neither one of us wants to go anywhere. That has caused numerous companies to leave the region already. We are currently doing some interviewing with companies that were in the region, that are in the region, and who are spinning out of the region. And the vast majority of them who have left because of clean room manufacturing. And it's because of that hurdle that I mentioned of FDA clinical trials require GMP produced products. I know that's a lot of acronyms. I'm sorry for that. But the solution to this is what we'll get to right here on this next slide, is a planning grant that the Fralin Biomedical Research Institute was recently awarded by Go Virginia. This is a very small proof of concept space. It's about 200 square feet. And what this will do is it's paying for a group of people who we assembled to interview companies in the region, outside of the region, to figure out what it is they need, what it is Roanoke needs to do to support this, and where we need to go from there. How large do these clean rooms need to be? How much space do they need? What's the % utilization of the space? And with this approach, over the next year, we're going to build this facility in the FBRI, and this will hopefully serve as a launching pad for these additional ramp companies who might be going through ramp right now. They might not go through ramp for another year or two, but if they are in biotechnology, they will get to the point where they require GMP manufacturing, and they will either leave, or hopefully if we have these facilities here, they'll be able to stay. So that's the hope, and that we're pushing ahead with this clean room in order to determine whether or not this is feasible for the region. But as of right now, if there's not engagement in the region for this sort of infrastructure, the companies like Jess and ours, fortunately, we both wanted to stay here, so we're still here. But these companies will continue to shed off and leave the region, most likely for Research Triangle. And unless there's an engagement and investment by the region, who wants to keep these spin outs from the FBRI, who go through ramp and who get into that analytical lab space, getting that next step installed will enable these companies to then produce revenue like Jess is talking about, and then build their own facilities, leaving the space open for the next wave of companies. So just to give a brief idea of what these look like, if you could go to the next one. Keep going. So tiny cargo, I can't actually talk about this yet, I don't think. The news release is coming out in the next few days. A building has been purchased, and we are putting in place a 1,500 square foot clean room right off Hugate Road. And this is done using the friends and family round that we raised last year for about $1 million. And we're opening a $5 million round in December in order to help for the production of or the processing and the overall operating costs of this facility. And that is really, I was telling Bart on the way in, we went all over the world to raise money when we were getting going, and we struggled to put together the funds. And we had one meeting with, I'm forgetting his name again. Thank you, Greg Feldman, and the Commonwealth Angels. And within that one meeting, we filled out $750,000 of our round, and that was Roanoke investors. And the plan is to go back to that well to talk to them this December. We have our shareholder meeting where we'll announce the round, and ideally, we'll be supported again by those in Roanoke who wish these facilities to be built and to move forward. So I'd like to thank you all again for your time here. Jess is going to show you their current project, which is similar to this in their clean room. And hopefully, if you have questions about this, we're going to leave plenty of time. We're here to answer questions, as many as you have. So if you have questions during the time, great. If the time fills up and you have any others, we'll be here. I really appreciate your attention.
Hi, everyone. So a little bit of what Spencer is doing, we're doing too. There's a little bit more on the industrial scale. Is going to focus mostly on the clean room itself. We're actually going to build an R&D QC facility as well. And we also have to, when he pulls milk, he can just prep it and put it right into his workflow. For us, we have to isolate platelets. So we need a tissue culture room in order to process blood and isolate those platelets. We'll have an R&D QC room to also bring on some of our new technology, which is from dog platelets for canine purposes. And then we also have an NIH grant to develop this for humans, which will be done in the R&D space. That's also supported by Johnson & Johnson in the incubator program. So our plan is to build a facility in the Blacksburg Industrial Park. It's about a 5,000 square foot space, a single story. We're going to put a 600 square foot modular clean room with space for also packing and shipping. So we'll be producing product and shipping it to veterinarians directly out of that facility. The problem in this area, which I think Spencer alluded to, is we just don't, landlords don't understand this type of infrastructure and the kind of money that goes into building this kind of infrastructure. So for an example, dollars a square foot in tenant improvement dollars. So, in a 5,000 square foot space, that's a significant chunk of money that now I don't have to raise and lose equity in my business. Unlike Spencer, I have completely bootstrapped this business, me and my husband and my current CEO. So this facility will be, and what we've been doing now to date has all been based out of my own pocket. So we will also be going for a raise probably in November or December to help build this facility. And like I said, we're kind of at that precipice of being able to be profitable. So once this place, space is in place and the upfit is done, I will be profitable within 6 months of starting in that facility. Because the FDA will come in, audit it, look at the batches that are coming out and approve the space. We've already, like everything that we're doing, we're actually showing the FDA and making sure it works before we even break ground. So we don't put something in there that doesn't make sense and might pigeonhole us in the long-term future. One of the things I wanted to bring back in my closing was superpowers, just because that seemed like a really good theme. So being an entrepreneur is a superpower. I think that both Spencer and I can attest to this has been a really long journey, and I'm lucky that my husband has kept with me and not divorced me, because I would have probably divorced me a long time ago. But long story short, I think balancing being a professor which Spencer is as well, balancing being a startup owner. And I'm also a mom of a 2-year-old, and I'm pregnant with my second. This is a lot to do, especially for entrepreneurs in the area, but we love Blacksburg. My husband and I met at Virginia Tech a long time ago. I'm not going to date myself by telling you when we met, but it was a long time ago. And we always wanted to come back to Blacksburg to raise a family, and we're doing that. So we have a lot of incentive to stay in the region, but not all companies do. And so some of those companies that don't have that drive or that pull to stay in the region, that love for the Blue Ridge Mountains, will leave.
Thank you both so much. I'm going to present an honorarium check. This goes to Verge Alliance. And we'll open it up for a few questions. When a question is asked, if you all could repeat the question for our folks on Zoom before you answer. Thanks.
Yeah, so BSL status and ISO status is different. So BSL status is to protect you from the work that you're doing. So because you're working with usually really high level infectious disease agents, a BSL2 is like the level of that agent that you're working with. So it's about protecting the user or the scientist from that. ISO levels is about protecting the product from the user and from the environment. So it's all about like clean room exchanges, air exchanges, and particulate counting. So every ISO, so there's ISO 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, and I think there's also a 4. Luckily, we don't have to go down to 4 because that is really expensive. But each one is based off of how many HEPA changes you have and how many particulates are in the area that you're working in.
Yes.
Yeah, so to date, we've actually been funded. So the science on the academic side has completely been funded by Grace and Jockey Club. So this has all been funded by the racehorse industry to date. So when we do raise, we will go back to them, and they'll basically spread the term sheet with their stakeholders.
Yes.
Yes, we are in the R&D phase with dogs, but we're actually just about to start clinical trials in dogs, our pilot clinical trials like we're doing in horses in the spring. And we're going to start with orthopedic like fractures and implants to see if that helps. And then we will also have a pilot trial looking at ACL repair, so you don't have to spend $6,000 on a TPLO surgery. So if anybody's had a dog that's had a TPLO surgery, we're hoping that BioPly will replace this as a therapeutic intra-articular injection option, which is much cheaper than a $6,000 surgery. Yeah, so we're hoping so with low risk status, because this is a naturally derived product, we're hoping to get low risk status within 6 months of the build out and the upfit, and that'll allow us to sell, just not market. So we can make it available, but we can't say this is going to fix your dog or your horse of X. Once we have that low risk status, it'll probably be another year before we get full approval on the horse. So probably about a year and a half for the horse or 2 to 3 years for the dog.
All right, great. Thanks, everyone. Let's give them a big round of applause. That was quite an edifying, pretty heavy science talk today and very edifying, but very enjoyable nonetheless. And as our presenter said, they're going to stay after the meeting so you can continue to ask questions. Next week, we've got a ramp instructor, Mike Abbott, who will also be introduced by Bart Wilner. And so today, in addition to the superpowers I mentioned with Ken Briggs, Mike Loveman, and Mike McAvoy, we've also got a very long proclamation of Sherry Hartman's superpowers, but I'm going to put that in one phrase and say champion of youth. And with that, we are adjourned.